I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you very much for joining us for our Climate Watch update for the month of May. And we are looking at a lot of dry weather coming our way out of the Tasman Sea thanks to a dominating area of high pressure. So let's try and get into it, break it down for you so you can see what's coming along. And as we go into the start of May, it's this big area of high pressure. This is the temperature and wind map as we go into May 1st. There's a lot of high pressure in this zone. That's why you don't see a lot of wind blowing around. To the north, you've got the southeast flow on the outer edges of the high, and down to the south, the normal windy westerlies in the Southern Ocean. So the temperature map shows fairly average temperatures around the New Zealand and Australia areas at the moment in the green-yellow colouring. The cold stuff down in Antarctica, the warm stuff up here in the tropics with the orange shading, which by the way is also coming down into Western Australia. But for New Zealand, high pressure is the main feature coming up. So we're going to try and break down rainfall, temperatures and the soil to help you try and make sense of it all. And we kick off with the soil moisture levels at the start of May. So you can see across the country, a little bit hard to read this a wee bit, but this is the departure from normal, and are we dry or wet? And I think it's pretty clear to see we're leaning into the dry side of that scale. So most of New Zealand drier than average. We saw the droughts being announced by the government. There are a number of regions that are well below average. And for this time of the year, it's actually quite surprising just how many places have below normal rainfall. And I've got to say, this is the third year in a row, the third April in a row, that we've had well below normal rainfall in the New Zealand area. We're still not 100% sure why. We'd love NIWA to explain it. There are climate scientists that we tax fund, so we'd love to get a comment from them. Hopefully we will in the next week or so, about just why we're getting so much high pressure and it's so much higher than usual. That's the soil moisture levels at 30 centimetres down. The soil temperatures, this is just 3 centimetres down, so only a little bit across the country. What we're looking at is green in the teens and blue in the single digits. So a little bit of cooling off on the soil temperatures as we go in towards winter, and not surprising with some of the cold nights we've just had. But when you drill down a bit deeper, 10 centimetres, it's still actually quite mild temperature-wise around the North Island. A lot of places in the late teens, or a lot of places in those low to mid-teens. Once you get a little bit deeper down into the soil, cold stuff around here on the western side where you've got single-digit temperatures in some areas. Right, let's now break down the weather pattern that is coming on into New Zealand for the month of May. We break it down week by week and we put into square boxes where the high pressure and low pressure is. And so just to try and make it a little bit more simplistic, and what you can see as we kick off the start of May, there is a lot of high pressure coming out of Australia. This is the main one though. This is going to dominate for a whole week, pretty much parked where it is for the first week of May. So don't expect much in the way of rain, although there's a bit of a southerly flow around the North Island, so you might just find a few showers make their way into Hawke's Bay and Gisborne, but the totals aren't going to be very much. Low pressure down here, and there's another big high coming into Australia as well. But it does break up a little bit as we go into week 2. In fact, next week there is some low pressure around Australia, both in Perth and Sydney. Now by the time we get to the start of week 2, May 7th, pretty much it's just this low that is still dominating, although I think this is also quite sort of in between low and high air pressure. So you might find there's a fair bit of showery stuff coming through there. But this low is likely to hug Australia while high pressure still dominates New Zealand. And this big block of high pressure is the same block of high pressure from week 1. So it is a very slow burn as it moves across the country. There's a lot of stormy stuff down here in the Southern Ocean, and in fact WeatherWatch's interpretation as to why New Zealand is getting more high pressure for the last couple of years, we think might have something to do with the fact that the Southern Ocean seems to be getting a lot of storms like this. And they've been having them over the summer months as well. So we're wondering if perhaps low pressure down there is making for higher pressure up here. That's why we'd love to get more feedback from the New Zealand government, from the scientists we have in New Zealand. So week 2, there is this chance of a rainmaker in the Tasman, but this is the big blocking high for New Zealand. And once we get to week 3, look at that, back again, high pressure dominating the map, dominating across Australia, the Tasman and into New Zealand. There might be a wee bit of a trough here that might allow for some showery weather to move into the upper North Island, but it is not locked in at this stage. I mean, this is all still low pressure at the top of the map, but it's very flat. There's no signs of any lows or storms up around the tropics at the moment. So very quiet. May is looking like it could be a very quiet month for New Zealand as high pressure dominates. But of course, when you look at the size of New Zealand and you look at the size of these boxes that cover the lows and the highs, you can see just how small we are. And it really doesn't take much for our weather pattern to change. That's why I'm not a huge fan of long-range forecasting, because you can get a little low that comes in and suddenly completely upends it all in our country. But the best thinking that we've got on the planet at the moment is suggesting there's a lot of high pressure coming in for the month of May. Let's have a look at some rainfall coming up. This is the first week of May, the departure from normal map. It shows whether rainfall for this time of the year is more or less than usual. And what this is showing in the reds and the pinks is drier than average. Drier than average. White is normal rainfall for this time of the year, and the blue areas show where it's a little bit wetter than what has been previously recorded at this time of the year. So high pressure is dominating New Zealand. That's why you're seeing it leaning drier than average, and that low that's coming in for Aussie, you can very clearly see there, bringing normal rainfall or even slightly wetter than average rainfall. So let's break that down a little bit further. This is the first week of rain, the actual totals of rain. And what I've done here and put into the white boxes, showing the areas that have got basically very little rain on the way. In fact, this box up here, the one that's got Australia under it, no rain at all. That's why there's no colouring there. These boxes, these other two ones, they do show some rainfall, but like that arrow is pointing to, 0.2 millimetres for that pale blue area there, and these pale blue areas around New Zealand. So there could be basically no rain or just a shower. The other areas of blue, 1 to 5 millimetres. That's the next week ahead. So basically no rain other than a couple of showers. Now we go to the rainfall accumulation right through to the middle of May. So this is the rainfall for the first half of the month. And again, the numbers are a little bit alarming on how low they are. These areas here in blue that you can see around the eastern sides, again, that's just 1 to 5 millimetres over the next 2 and a bit weeks from when we recorded this. The other areas in yellow and gold, maybe 20, 30 millimetres if you're lucky, coming through. Could be a few showers that might accumulate there. The only place with actual rain, normal rainfall, is over on the west coast, where your rainfall totals are getting up to 50, 60, 70 millimetres and maybe even over 100 down into those southern parts of Westland. So it is looking pretty dry as we go through the month of May. Now the May temperatures, departure from normal. Which way are we leaning? Warmer or colder or bang on normal? It looks as though we're leaning just a little bit warmer than average once again. So to me, most of New Zealand between 0.5 degree and 1 degree warmer than average. It feels like I've been saying that since we've been doing these ClimateWatch videos for the last year and a half. So not surprising at all to see that. And this data is coming out of our partners at IBM. And before we finish, just a quick look at the Bureau of Meteorology, covering in Australia. The scientists there are so great, and they cover the ENSO outlook, which is basically covering whether or not we've got La Nina or El Nino, or at the moment, inactive. So right in the middle, that means we've got a neutral weather pattern. Anything can happen. We've got a lot of high pressure at the moment, but this should indicate the chance of some wet weather. It's when it goes this way that we're really getting into drought territory. But you know, New Zealand does have droughts going on. Weather Watch has been exclusively talking about this since December. In fact, we put out a press release in the first week of January saying, Aucklanders, your water is going to continue to be very low and below normal, and for many other regions, droughts are coming in. We were the only forecaster in the country to talk that way, and it's a little bit unfortunate. We were hoping we'd be wrong. We're hoping that the rain would start to come in, and while we have had a little bit of relief here and there are these big pockets that have missed out, which is why we're getting these drought announcements. Also, the long range look at whether or not we're going into La Nina or El Nino looks like we're pretty much neutral. May, July, September, right through till spring this year, we've got the same weather pattern. So don't expect perhaps a great deal of change, although those big highs we've got that are dominating our country at the moment, if those highs move away a little bit and we start to get a couple of lows around them, our rainfall could completely change and suddenly be leaning wetter than average. But for that to happen, we do need these big highs to just get out of the way. That is all from me. Thank you so much for joining us for our May outlook. We'll be putting these maps up on the Weather Watch website, so check that out if you need to. Go to weatherwatch.co.nz or ruralweather.co.nz. We will see you again in a month. Have a fantastic May.